5 creepy facts about Jack the Ripper. The streets of Victorian London whispered his name. Jack the Ripper, a shadow in the fog, a phantom of flesh and blood, whose presence turned alleys into chambers of terror, whose silence screamed louder than any confession. The year was 1888, Whitechapel, East End, London, a place where poverty, disease, and despair mingled in the gaslit mist. Here life was cheap and fear was currency. And into this darkness he came, a predator of precision, a hunter who understood the anatomy of terror itself. Fact 1. His anonymity. Nobody knew his face, his voice, his motive. The police, desperate and overwhelmed, chased whispers through narrow streets and crowded markets, while the city's imagination did the rest. In the minds of Londoners, he became more than a man. He became the embodiment of the unknown. A spectre whose identity was a mirror of their deepest anxieties. And this anonymity made him immortal. For centuries the question remained, who was he? Was he a doctor, a butcher, a madman, or simply a man who understood the human instinct for fear better than anyone else? His elusiveness teaches us that the unknown has a power that logic cannot contain, and that fear, when left unchecked, can become a legend. Fact 2. The grotesque precision of his crimes. He did not merely kill, he dissected, he arranged, he staged. The mutilations were surgical, deliberate, a calculated act of horror that spoke of both knowledge and compulsion. Police reports describe the careful removal of organs, the bloody geometry of each scene, and the terrifying intimacy with which he treated his victims. This was not violence born of impulse, it was artistry in atrocity. The human mind recoils at such calculated cruelty, yet in understanding it, we glimpse the thin line between genius and madness. It reminds us that knowledge, detached from morality, can become a weapon of unimaginable horror. Fact 3. The letters. Hundreds of words written to the press and police, some signed Jack the Ripper, taunting, mocking, creating a dialogue of fear between killer and society. Some historians contest their authenticity, but the effect was undeniable. These letters turned the crimes into theater, public obsession into a performance, and fear into a spectacle. They teach us how human curiosity and desire for narrative can be manipulated, how words alone can become instruments of terror, and how the media, even then, could amplify horror beyond its immediate reality. Modern life, with its instantaneous news and social media frenzy, mirrors this ancient dance of attention and dread, where every act of violence risks becoming myth. Fact 4. The societal mirror. Jack the Ripper was terrifying not only because of his acts, but because of what he revealed about Victorian society. Poverty, neglect, gender inequity, and the fragility of law enforcement were laid bare in Whitechapel's fog. The women he murdered were marginalized, ignored, often written off by society before the killer touched them. In this sense, his crimes were grotesque reflections of systemic failures, reminders that evil does not exist in isolation. He thrived where the social conscience slept, and his story challenges us to examine our own communities, our own complicity, and the quiet injustices that allow monsters to exist. Fact 5. The enduring fascination. More than a century later, Jack the Ripper remains a cultural obsession, a subject of books, films, and endless speculation. Why do we return to his story? Perhaps because it reminds us of the fragility of civilization, the proximity of chaos and the darkness within us all. His legend persists because he represents both fear and curiosity, a warning that human obsession can elevate horror into immortality. The Ripper teaches that evil is amplified when it engages with the collective imagination, that our fascination with darkness is a reflection of our own shadowed nature, and that history unexamined repeats not in exact acts, but in patterns of terror and neglect. And so, as the fog rises over those cobbled streets and the gas lamps flicker, we are drawn not only into his crimes, but into the quiet spaces between them, the questions about ourselves, our society, our morality. Jack the Ripper is not merely a figure of the past, he is a mirror. In understanding him, we confront the uncomfortable truth that fear is not only in him, but in us. in our silence, in our capacity to overlook injustice, in our fascination with the macabre. To know the Ripper is to know a shadow of humanity itself, a shadow that lurks not only in Whitechapel but in every city, every era, and even within our own minds. Pause and reflect. For every legend of terror, there is a lesson about vigilance, empathy, and the cost of ignoring the marginalized. Fear can be a teacher, horror a guide, and history a mirror that forces us to see what we would rather not acknowledge. Jack the Ripper whispers still through time, not just in fear but in reflection, challenging us to confront our own shadows before they take form in the world. If the shadow of history teaches anything, let it be this: to see, to question, and to act with awareness. Do not let silence be your accomplice. Do not let fascination replace responsibility. In the echo of his footsteps through Victorian streets, hear the call to vigilance in your own life. Discover history with curiosity, confront fear with courage, and remember, some shadows are lessons, not just ghosts. Subscribe now to explore the stories that history does not dare to forget, and learn how the past continues to shape the human soul today.